Okay, so yeah, we've got a packed schedule to get through and between now and 12 o'clock. So yeah, we'll just start. Okay, welcome everybody and thanks for joining us this morning. My name's Leslie Judge. I am, I've got two hats, so sector engagement for tourism at Interface, and some of you will know me as project manager for Travel Tech for Scotland. I've got a few housekeeping items I'm going to cover first. So we are recording the event this morning. If you don't want to be recorded, please just keep your camera off. Could I ask you possibly, unless we're at the question and answer sessions, would you be able to keep your cameras and your mics off, please, if you don't mind? And then when we get to the question and answer parts, we can put our cameras back on. The question and answer sessions, we have two opportunities. The first one at 11 o'clock for 15 minutes, and the second one at 11:45 for 10 minutes. And we will endeavour to keep to time with our speakers and our content today. So I'd like to welcome our speakers for today. We're going to hear from Cade Wells, Business Development Director at CENSIS, and Kevin Power, who's a software systems architect. We're also going to hear from Professor Angela Tregear from the University of Edinburgh Business School, and Leanne Dixon, who is Assistant Coordinator for Visitor Management at Perth and Kinross Council. For those not aware of what Interface does, we act as matchmakers between businesses and academia. We champion collaboration across sectors. We provide a free service to individuals and organisations, businesses of all sizes, to help match them to academic expertise. All kinds of projects, funded projects, student projects, and we also deliver a lot of knowledge exchange events like this, with a focus on, for me, particularly potential applications of technology and how these can help businesses and organisations. And this event relates to ongoing projects in different parts of Scotland, which are addressing visitor management using sensors and IoT and data. There is a national visitor management coordination group, and you can find out more about that on the Visit Scotland website, and we'll post information in the chat. And as a subgroup of that, there's a digital visitor management group, which both of our national parks are in, and some councils. And these digital projects are being developed to address lots of issues that are common in our rural and coastal areas: camping, car parking, litter, antisocial behaviour, all kinds of challenges that we're facing, and using data to monitor remote sites, rural sites, and link up ranger reporting on the ground to see what we can do to address those challenges. What's also a challenge is also how we use technology to try and influence visitors and how they behave, and even in their decision making before they leave the house.
Leslie, you've just gone on mute there somehow, so maybe just unmute yourself. I'm not quite sure why that's happened. There you go.
Oh, so I don't know how much people have missed. I didn't mute myself, so I don't know what happened there.
For just the last 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, just so we're going to hear more about interesting work from the Cairngorms National Park that Angela's been developing, looking at insights into how visitors use digital tools such as apps. And we're also going to hear from Leanne Dixon about a brand new app, Explore Outdoors, based on a CivTech challenge, which has all been focused around using technology to address a lot of the visitor management issues that these projects are addressing. So lots of interesting stuff this morning, and please do put questions in the chat, any thoughts that you have. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Cade Wells, Business Development Director at CENSIS, to set the scene for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning to everybody, and welcome to this session today. As Leslie said, my name's Cade Wells. I'm the Business Development Director at CENSIS. For those of you who aren't aware of CENSIS, CENSIS is one of 7 not-for-profit innovation centres that's based in Scotland. We have an office in Glasgow and also in Inverness. And our remit as an innovation centre is to work with organisations of all shapes and sizes to overcome challenges using and developing technology. And in our role, we work across all market sectors. Tourism is one of those market sectors that we work in as one of the key sectors within Scotland. And we've been delivering projects now for 10 years. It's our 10-year anniversary this year. Increasingly, what we're seeing, particularly in the tourism sector, is more and more organisations looking to do similar things to other organisations in Scotland. So increasingly, we're linking up different organisations to talk to each other and share ideas, but also an interest in scaling up, moving away from just pilot projects to operational projects that are at scale, both in terms of the geographical spread, quite often as well using the same hardware and software to meet multiple different use cases. So collecting data and using that data in different ways for different applications, but also, and probably very important in these current times, is ensuring that we're getting the best return on the investment in technology and getting the most impact out of that technology. So areas where we're starting to see increased interest in Scotland is in things like open data and data sharing, and how that can be facilitated across different organisations, both public sector, private sector and third sector. And these are the types of conversations that CENSIS is really interested to be involved in, to look to understand what the technology challenges are and help others to collaborate to overcome those. So with that in mind, I'm now going to pass you over to Kevin Power, the Principal Architect at CENSIS, to talk about some of these technologies and some of the solutions for addressing the kind of breaking out from the silos and enabling data sharing in a wider sense. So over to you, Kevin.
Kevin, that's it. Okay, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my presentation loading there. Thank you very much, Cade, for that introduction. I'm hoping the slides will load in a second. Just let me know, thumbs up when you can see them coming through. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, welcome all to today's event. I'm hoping that most of the audience know about IoT in today's world. But if not, hopefully some of these slides will help you guys understand what it's all about and how we can utilise it. So essentially, before we get into the slides, I'll do a quick introduction. My background is in the wireless comms space. I've been in the industry for almost 16 years now. I started my career here in Scotland working for Freescale Semiconductor, who used to be Motorola. Shortly after that, I went to London. The intention was to stay there for a couple of years, ended up there for 7 years. Spent that whole time developing the specifications for 4G. So all the base stations, etc., and the mobile phone technology you have in your pocket, I was part of the standards team developing that. I then moved home shortly before 4G was deployed in the UK in about 2012, spent some time in the oil and gas sector before that bubble burst. And since then, I've been at CENSIS, and I think it's almost 8 years now. And my whole time at CENSIS has been dedicated to IoT. Now, IoT really is all about data. It's about capturing the data from the physical world, from devices, sensors, etc. So what I want to do today is cover the several topics. I've quite a lot of slides, and I'm hoping I'll be able to keep this on time. So I think it's important to roll back several years to understand where we were when IoT was just emerging. Okay. We were actually the pioneers behind the nationwide network that now exists in Scotland for LoRaWAN. Now, LoRaWAN, you might not know what that is. LoRaWAN is a long-range radio protocol. So when you go back to maybe pre-2015, The only radio protocols that could transmit data at long distances commercially were things like 2G and 3G and 4G. But these technologies don't lend themselves well to battery-powered devices. And most IoT applications target those types of battery-powered devices. So LoRaWAN came along as a new technology, and it sort of opened so many different doors for essentially options for deploying IoT devices out in the field. We'll then cover off some of the early pilots that we got involved in. And then, as I mentioned, we were involved in the national rollout of LoRaWAN, providing nationwide coverage to Scotland. Then came along narrowband IoT and CAT-M. Now, these are just buzzwords. I'll try and explain what they are later. Essentially, these are long-range, low-power technologies carried over 4G technology. And we know how good 4G is today in Scotland, in most places that is. I then want to just summarise where we are now and how good the ecosystem is that we have in Scotland for IoT. But now, as we have built that ecosystem up, we've came across several problems. One of them is data silos, and I'll explain that later. One of them is device commissioning at scale, when we've got tens of thousands of devices. And then how we manage all that data through data exchanges. And I'm going to finish off by just focusing on IoT for tourism and some sample projects that we have been involved in over the years in that sector. So just as I said, rolling back to 2015, 2016, Semtech are the inventors of LoRaWAN technology. So they're the guys who own the IP. They approached us very early on with the idea of building a citywide network in Glasgow. We then teamed up with various partners, Stream Technologies, who are now ARM or Pelion, Boston Networks, who are now North, still going. And we actually built a 12-kilometre square network in Glasgow to test LoRaWAN, to understand its limitations and also understand all the sort of the pinch points, let's say, in deploying these types of systems. So this was the sort of the seed in Scotland for LoRaWAN, essentially. Some of the early projects that we got involved in those days were smart street lighting, for instance. So we worked with a company called Power One. We worked with Glasgow City Council. We worked with Boston Networks in developing pilots for controlling streetlights. Now, in that time, 2015, 2016 timeframe, all the councils were going through a procurement exercise to roll out smart streetlights because of the energy saving aspects that they could deliver. And in simple terms, this was the first real rollout of IoT in Scotland back then in 2015, 2016. We also developed one of the first indoor air quality devices using a device from Gas Sensing Solutions in Cumbernauld in Scotland. So there's quite a funny story behind this. One of our partners, Stream Technologies, their office was in Sky Park. And if you don't know Sky Park, it's one of the major commercial buildings in Glasgow. You can see it from across the city. So we deployed some of these CO2 sensors in their office at that time. We found that the CO2 levels were very high throughout the day, almost 2000 ppm consistently from about 11 AM till 4 or 5 PM. We couldn't quite work out why. I actually spent a lot of time in that office, and everyone was drinking coffee. Everyone was drinking full-fat Coke for all the caffeine, essentially to keep them awake because the CO2 was so high. They didn't know that at the time. But from the data, we could actually tell them that they had to start opening windows. It turns out their air conditioning system wasn't working. So this is why they were drinking Coke and coffee, etc. CO2 sensors are now rolled out in every single primary school in Scotland because of the link between concentration and CO2 levels, essentially. So I would like to think that we pioneered this also way back in 2015, 2016. We also worked on some tracking applications using Semtech's LoRaWAN technology. their triangulation service was deployed for us in Glasgow. So devices that didn't have a GPS module inside them could also use LoRaWAN for triangulation. It wasn't successful as we were expecting. The best I think we got was 150-meter accuracy, which is almost no good in a built-up city environment. I mentioned in the previous slides about the national LoRaWAN network. Whilst we were running the Glasgow network, some of our directors were lobbying the government in Scotland for a national network, because, as I said, at that time there was no network that could really serve battery-powered devices at scale. And battery power is one of the key metrics for IoT in most cases. So now we have a full national network. It's run by a company called North, who used to be Boston Networks. It was a £6 million investment from the government. We have over 600 gateways deployed across Scotland. All the major cities are covered, and there's a lot of rural towns and smaller cities covered as well. The main rollouts we're seeing at the moment are in the social housing space, where we've got tens of thousands of devices out there for detecting mould, for instance, in lots of the local authorities. Air quality, I mentioned, the schools are massively one of the main adopters for indoor air quality, mainly CO2. Smart waste, we've got Edinburgh Council deploying thousands of bin sensors at the moment, tens of thousands of bin sensors. And obviously smart street lighting's been about for some time now. We've probably got over 200, maybe 300,000 street lights connected through IoT technologies today. So it's came a long way. The picture for LoRaWAN in Scotland is looking great at the moment. So that's a plus. Whilst LoRaWAN was being deployed, the operators such as Vodafone and O2 were also deploying their versions of low-power radio technologies. Vodafone were pioneering narrowband IoT. It's very similar to 4G, but it's just very low power. The O2 stuff is also very similar to 4G. It's slightly higher power LTE-M, and it can carry voice as well. But essentially, all of this stuff is very low cost now. It's competing with LoRaWAN on price. The coverage is exceptional because it runs over 4G. And we also know that, well, I don't know if the audience will know this, but 2G and 3G will soon be turned off in the UK. So these two technologies are there to replace them, essentially. And we're looking at probably in the UK up to 95% of landmass coverage for these two technologies in the future. So that'll probably be completed 2025, 26, I think. So in terms of getting data back from sensors in the field, the picture is looking very good at the moment. And as I said, it's very cost effective as it stands at the moment. So where are we now? Probably 6-7 years down the line, we've essentially got a thriving IoT ecosystem in Scotland. Starting with the utilities, they're one of the main adopters of IoT. We work very closely with Scottish Water and Scottish Power. They are taking this very seriously. The councils as well. It's been a slow process with the councils. Their budgets are very tight. But if you look at Aberdeen, Renfrewshire, Stirling and Edinburgh, they seem to be pioneering all the IoT stuff at the moment. The healthcare side as well. There's a massive programme at the moment for digital telecare, which we're involved in, which is huge for the nation. We've got academia, they're all over IoT as well. We work with them day in, day out. We've got the SME community as well. So Utopia, IOP, Crucial, M2M Cloud. If you look at Utopia, for instance, they're on track to deliver 200,000 devices per year at the moment into the ESG space for energy saving, etc. IOPT are pioneering the social housing space with their sensors for mould. You've got Crucial looking at satellite connectivity for IoT applications as well. And then you've got the major integrators like North, who run the IoT Scotland network for Scotland and also deploy all the devices for most of the councils. So the picture is really good. Tourism isn't on this at the moment, but I think that will be an emerging sector in this space. And hopefully in a couple of years' time, we can talk in more detail about tourism and the use cases that have been deployed at scale in that space. There's lots and lots of challenges with deploying IoT, lots of them. We need to be careful with cost. The margins in IoT aren't huge in most cases. Things can be very complex with all the different protocols available, all the different vendors available on the market. So managing complexity is one of the key aspects of rolling out IoT at scale. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand or appreciate in deploying things at scale is the time it takes a technician or an engineer to deploy a device. This is one of the biggest cost burdens at the moment. I mentioned Scottish Water. We're involved in a very big project with them at the moment, and we supply into one of their suppliers for a particular device. The target was to bring down the installation time from 1 hour to 15 minutes, just because of the cost associated with rolling out that type of system. So that is one of the major design considerations at the moment in deploying IoT at scale. And we need to be very cautious of that because the cost can snowball quite quickly. Device commissioning is a major part of getting devices out in the field. We need to make this as streamlined as possible. We use a platform called Daisy at the moment, and most of the large integrators in the UK also use this. It's a platform that allows you to take any device from the market and have a one-stop shop for integration, whether you're using LoRaWAN, Narrowband, LTE-M, or any other protocol. It allows engineers to very quickly install and commission devices in the field using their intelligent app, and it's all QR code based in most cases. But not only that, this platform provides the full data pipeline for devices and applications. So whether it's just diagnostics you want to look at, or whether it's the actual application data and where you want to route that data to as well, at the end of the day, the data has to go to a database somewhere and has to be presented on a dashboard somewhere else. So it's all about managing that and streamlining that process, but doing it cost effectively as well. So if you're looking at IoT at scale, I very much recommend Daisy as the go-to platform for this at the moment. Now, the major problem we're seeing at the moment, because IoT has started to mature, is we're seeing a lot of data silos, unfortunately. So if you look at specific councils, let's say, they've got a street lighting application, they've got an air quality application, they've got a road sensor application. All these applications are in most cases provided by different vendors, which means there's different contracts, procurement processes, billing, etc. There's individual accounts for every single dashboard, and there's no integration whatsoever between these apps. And what this leads to is essentially limited insights. Obviously, there's reduced efficiency there, and obviously increased costs. So we're seeing this as a major problem at the moment across Scotland, because everyone's went away and done their own thing with the networks that have been available over the years and their own procurement processes. And now they have a challenge of, how do we share this data between different local authorities? How do we share data between the local authority and the fire service or the environment agency such as SEPA? And this is a big topic at the moment for us and people in the government as well, and trying to understand how we solve this. So what we're looking at the moment is data exchanges. Now, what this concept is all about is, yes, we have the data lakes and the data storage and vertical apps at the moment, but what we need is a secure and resilient way to share that data across many different endpoints. So we're not saying we have to replicate data in another platform. what we're looking for is a role-based consent method that allows us to onboard accounts, let's say, for sharing data between the fire service and the councils or vice versa. So SEPA are very much heavily involved in this. We've got the fire service I've mentioned, and we've got the local government digital office involved in this as well, and trying to understand how we create a consistent platform to share this data across all the different stakeholders in Scotland in respect of the IoT deployments, but also understand how we can try and monetize certain data streams as well, because I think this is important. There's a lot of value in the data out there at the moment, and there's a lot of investment in that data. So organisations are also looking to understand how they can try and monetize that. So on to tourism. And there's probably not enough, I don't think, of IoT in tourism at this point. So I guess this is what this event's all about. How do we create some momentum there and get some deployments going at scale? We have done a fair bit of work on visitor flow. We've seen some AR experiences out there as well. Intelligent travel, such as parking spaces, North Coast 500s, for instance, and digitising things at scale. So to give you an example of some of the projects we've been involved in, this is a live project at the moment at Calney Stones and Visitor Centre. They want to understand visitor numbers at the Stones, and you can see here just from the map, it's quite a complex environment. There's no power at the Stones at all, so we're looking at battery-powered devices and try to understand how to do that efficiently. They want to understand how busy the car park is, etc. as well, so, and the visitor numbers, so they can look at scheduling different things and understanding how their facilities are used. A recent deployment in Glenlivet mountain bike event. We've deployed some bike counters, vehicle counters, and people counters. Again, it's all about understanding usage patterns, so the centre can actually accommodate things more efficiently than what they're doing at the moment, I think. So it's very simple things at the moment in IoT for tourism. And just to finish off, I know my time is tight here. I've got a short video that I'm going to play. Hopefully this plays through. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed that little video there, and I hope you enjoyed the overall presentation. I think we've got a 15-minute session of questions and answers. Leslie, is that correct?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. That was great. A little bit technical maybe at the beginning, but I think it was necessary to go through what you did to for us to get a better understanding of the evolution of the network, and I think the tourism piece at the end, just the fact that there's so many of us in terms of destinations are looking at, you know, how do we understand demand in areas and capacity as well. So I think that was a great video. And again, thanks for sharing all of that with us. So people, if you want to put your cameras on, and we've got time, there are some questions in the chat. You can also put your hand up, use the hand icon to raise your hand if you've got questions. I think we have a couple of questions already. There's one from Angela. With respect to data exchange and sharing, what challenges are there around ownership and commercial value?
Yeah, the thing about the data sharing strategy that we're looking at the moment is the data owner will always own the data, and they'll always be in control of that data. And it's up to them to provide access at specific levels. So, and what they want to expose essentially. Not every local authority, not every organisation is going to want to expose all their data. They might want to expose some of their data for health and safety reasons, or the fire safety issues that I spoke about. So, and it's really up to them to control the commercial side of that data as well, whether they want to try and monetize it or not. We know the councils are desperate to try and bring in other revenue streams, but it's not as simple as just opening up data for commercial reasons. There's lots of things to consider there.
I know. Cade, have you got any thoughts on that?
No, I think Kevin's covered things quite well there. We do see quite a kind of spectrum of views of value of data that's created by organisations. I think very much from a CENSIS standpoint, you know, we're seeing opportunities for different organizations to share data, maybe some sort of mutual agreement where, you know, there's no kind of monetization, there's no money that passes from one organization to another. There's just a mutual benefit of sharing that information. And I suppose the typical use case that we hear about, if we look to the tourism space, is that of you know, when we're looking at the journeys that somebody may be on as they travel through Scotland, and the different touch points with the different services, both private sector and public sector, and what can we do with data to ensure that they get the best possible experience when people are visiting Scotland, and that actually we're maximising the opportunity as well for income for the different local communities that that the people are actually visiting and spending time with. So that's just one example where, you know, where we can bring people together to have these discussions. I think there's value in doing that. And from a CENSIS standpoint, we're very keen to hear from organisations who are interested in doing that and joining the discussions that Kevin's described around data sharing and trying to open up data in Scotland for the benefit of all.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there are lots of issues still, and knowing just from our visitor management group, and I think some of us from the visitor management group are here with us today. And please, if you've got anything that you want to raise or ask, please do. We have another question here from Heather Trench. In the examples given, who's responsible for upkeep and ongoing costs of infrastructure, and does it need much ongoing maintenance? Good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and people often don't appreciate that cost. Most guys think you can just deploy this IoT stuff and it'll work forever and ever. That's not the case. Things break. Batteries only last so long. We'd all obviously try and make sure that if it's a battery-powered device, it lasts as long as possible. But things do fail. So we tend to work with one of our partners, North, who used to be Boston Networks, who actually run the IoT Scotland network, the radio network that is. But they also have service contracts for all sorts of different things, from Wi-Fi to CCTV and to IoT. So it's a service contract essentially with them. And if there's any failures, any maintenance work required, it's up to them with their men and vans to go out and fix things, essentially. There is a cost associated with that, obviously, and that has to be brought into the mix when you're looking at the business case.
Okay,
Hope that
that's
makes
great,
sense.
Kevin. Yeah, there's another question that it might be quite difficult to answer because obviously it really depends on the specific project and area. But Cheryl, question from Cheryl Chapman: what scale of cost are we talking about? Is it thousands, hundreds of thousands, or more? And also, does it report in real time?
Yeah, it can be real time. It depends on the use case. So again, because it's battery powered, you don't want to be sending data all the time because one of the major power draws is the radio side. So in most of our devices that we work with, we're essentially sending up bulk data, maybe every 15 minutes or so, which is, for most use cases, is good enough. In terms of cost, now it's a difficult one to answer, and it depends on the kit that's being deployed. In terms of maintenance contracts, it may be several K per year for a visitor site, potentially. The devices probably only cost, in most cases, £500 and below, we'd like to think, in most cases. That's a CapEx cost. Communication cost for getting data back to the cloud, etc., is maybe 50 pence a month. So the ongoing comms costs are quite low. The CapEx cost for deploying kit can sometimes be quite high if you've got lots of devices going out. And then you've got the maintenance yearly cost going in there as well. You also might have some cloud costs for the application hosting, etc. But you're probably talking, for a small deployment, maybe 10K, let's say, to get things up and running. And then maybe 1 or 2K per year to keep that going, maximum.
Yeah, I suppose it does depend on the individual site and the requirements of the site.
Yeah, I'm just thinking to the recent stuff, the Kelnish Stones and the Glenlivet stuff. It's probably about a 10K budget.
I hope that's useful for you, Cheryl. We have a question from Murray Ferguson from Cairngorms National Park. There are similar issues with data silos in the world of GIS and the management of spatial data. Is the IoT discussion and data exchanges joined up with that so that all of this becomes more useful?
Yes, so all the local authorities, the police, the fire service, they all use Esri. So ArcGIS, everyone will be hopefully familiar with that. So Esri is core to this data strategy going forward. We're working with the local digital office on this. We've got all the council stakeholders there. So they're looking to share their Esri data across this data exchange platform as much as possible. I just wish the Esri data sharing was a bit better than it is at the moment as a product, and that would probably solve a lot of the issues, but it doesn't quite cut the mustard there. But yeah, the spatial data is fundamental to this strategy.
Kate, I saw that you had your hand up. Was there something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, just I suppose a couple of points touching on a few of the things that Kevin's already said. So we've seen a lot of interest, particularly in the use of smart camera technology. And again, I suppose the point that I would make with most of the smart camera technology systems that are IoT based is you're not generally sending video or images back. You're doing the decision making, as we would say, on the edge within the camera itself. So that still lends itself quite nicely to the relatively small amounts of data that are sent back. So, for example, the number of people that a camera might see in a car park, for example. You know, you're sending back a number, you're not sending back video. Now that's positive as well from a kind of data protection and privacy standpoint. A couple of other points that I would make as well is we realise that there's a bit of a gap between different organisations and the knowledge of IoT. Obviously, CENSIS is here to support. One of the things that we're currently in the process of developing is a 2-day IoT course, which is designed for both technical and non-technical people. It's going to be delivered by colleges across Scotland, and over 2 days takes you through the process of looking at designing a kind of a network at the top level, covers the aspects of and challenges around procurement, talks about maintenance and actually the decommissioning of IoT systems, which is something we don't talk about a great deal. But obviously with IoT, it's not always about permanent installations. It can be just about a temporary installation to gather data. Maybe it's a diagnostic, maybe it's just to actually understand if something does need to be done on site, and maybe it doesn't, and there's no need for ongoing monitoring. It may be just sporadic monitoring. So we're not always talking about permanent installations. And again, this is where if we've got multiple organisations across Scotland looking to do very similar things, there are obviously benefits in terms of scale, in terms of procurement, but also in terms of sharing of equipment for actually doing these kind of temporary installations and grabbing data. So again, it's another good kind of call to action for those organisations that have an interest at the moment in gathering certain types of information to reach out to obviously interface on ourselves, and obviously we'll help to join people together wherever we can.
Yeah, and I hope it came across in the presentation that the comms side is so important to IoT, and we've came a long way in the last 7 years. The comms side from the radio side is very, very good in Scotland, so it makes things so much easier from a deployment perspective. The cost of devices is coming down significantly as well, so that helps. And the cost of actual comms is in the noise now. It's so cheap, it's almost throwaway. So things are looking good, and it's time that we started thinking about trying to capitalise on this and take tourism a step forward, I think, in Scotland.
Okay, great. Now we've got a question. We've still got some questions. I'm conscious of time because we need to move on to our next speaker very shortly. But James, a question from James. You got your hand up.
Hello, thanks. My name's Jim Downey from Lochholm Trossachs National Park. We have been involved in visitor management for quite a wee time now, in terms of, in behaviours and honeypot sites and the likes. Biggest challenge we've got is we have a lot of staff out who have mobile devices, who are collecting information and sending it back to Esri. We hope to present that in dashboards in order to help. Whenever you've got a big place and a few people, you need to make intelligence-led deployment as opposed to send them out doing whatever they like. So you want to be going to the places that matter. And this all sounds amazing for that. Biggest issue we've got is those devices connecting. Yeah. And actually being able to get, so even in terms of safety cover, not necessarily voice isn't the most important thing, but to be able to, communicate through words, through positioning, through that kind of stuff, and we just don't get a level of cover. Is there any way that, LoRaWAN or Internet of Things helps with that? I'm sorry, I'm quite new to this, so I don't necessarily see a difference between. I've got, I don't know, 12, 14 mobile devices in the field just now, and they are struggling to do deployment for us. How does this help?
So I'm assuming those devices are mobile phones, yeah?
They're phablets, so they're a combination, because we need to rely on, we want to send data, email, as well as voice, because we know voice doesn't work very well. So let's go for the next thing. But actually, even our safety fobs, so you can't see that, don't necessarily pick up enough information to be able to send, and it causes red alerts. It causes people going, where is everybody? Just because they fell at a data range.
Yeah. So that LoRaWAN can't help with that. The only thing it can help with that, and it's ongoing at the moment, is the MNOs have teamed up with the UK government. So there was a press release a couple of years ago about, it's called a 4G, the best description is 4G infill. So what they're trying to do in the UK, it's the first ever in the Western world investment in the mobile phone network from the government, that is, to deploy 4G to 95% of the landmass, not population mass. So this is ongoing at the moment. The plan is to roll out 4G across the board in Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Wales, essentially, right? But it's ongoing at the moment. The sites aren't up yet. It will take time, unfortunately. That 95% number is for the UK. It comes down to 80-something% for Scotland, just because of the geography. So we're hoping that the Trossachs will be covered well by 4G, bearing in mind that 2G and 3G are getting turned off pretty soon, 2025. So 4G is our saviour to provide coverage across the lands of Scotland. So that's the hope, and that's all I can really say on that at the moment. Further down the line is NTN, so non-terrestrial networks, where a mobile device will communicate with satellites direct. Now, this has just been launched. There's been a lot of press globally from South Korea and the US on this. And it's the satellites that are going to be hosting the radio infrastructure to deal with that. Now, there are some that are commercial at the moment, but you need a special device to work that. We're hoping in the next 5 years, all your mobile devices, all the Apple devices and Android devices will come with that technology as standard, which will enable you to have a communications link anywhere in the world, essentially, using satellite. How much that's going to cost, we don't know at the moment. But all these things, they take time, unfortunately. So no, we can't solve that issue you've got at the moment. We're at the mercy of the MNOs, the Vodafones, the EEs at the moment, unfortunately. Yeah, that's all I can really say on that, unfortunately.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I wonder, thank you, James. It's a really good question, actually. I wonder if maybe, we're just conscious of time, we're a little bit over now. Maybe you guys can connect afterwards and you know, continue that conversation. And it is a pertinent one. What I'd like to do now is, we've still got some questions from Kim and Lorna, and maybe if you don't mind, we could come back to those at the next question session. We'd like to move now to hear from Leanne Dixon, who is Visitor Management Coordinator at Perth and Kinross Council. She's going to give us some information, a brief overview of a new Explore Outdoors app. Now, this app is a visitor app, but it's based on a CivTech Challenge project, which has been using digital tools and data to address lots of visitor management issues. And it's a project between Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park, Stirling Council, Perth and Kinross Council. So I'm going to hand over to Leanne. Thank you. If we can just switch our cameras back off and our mics, and we'll reconvene after we hear from Leanne.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, Leanne, I think maybe you want to go into presenter mode.
Yeah, I've just clicked. There we go. It was just
That's
taking
it.
its time. Perfect.
Thanks,
Hi,
Leanne.
my name's Leanne Dixon, and I'm the Assistant Coordinator for Visitor Management here in Perth and Kinross Council. So it's quite short. It'll be short and sweet. We're going to discuss our new Explore Outdoors map that we have recently created, and has only been launched for approximately about a fortnight. So it's very new to us, and it's still getting produced, as you'll be able to find out shortly. So the map has been developed by Waverley, a Scottish company that uses digital technology to promote tourism. As Leslie's discussed, it forms part of a CivTech Challenge, which was created in response to the issues experienced in the pandemic when lockdown easing saw thousands of visitors flocking to the countryside. Although most visitors behaved responsibly, a huge influx of visitors created issues with traffic, litter, fire in some areas, as well as some irresponsible behaviour. What everybody probably found during lockdown and the easing of lockdown is a lot of people who never used to go to the countryside started going to the countryside and maybe didn't quite know the rules that they needed to follow. The challenge, which involves the council working with Waverley, Stirling Council, Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park, CENSIS and the Scottish Government. The Digital Office for Local Government has also been installing sensors to monitor vehicles and people's movements at various sites to generate better information to help people enjoy their visit. The new map will be complement with Perth and Kinross Council's Ranger Service, which has been in place since 2021 to help promote the responsible tourism. So as I said, it has only been launched a short time period. We will hope that word of mouth, our rangers will be discussing it with visitors, and then it will slowly grow to be bigger. Our new interactive map and tourist guide will also ensure tourists will make the most of the trip to Perth and Kinross Council, the council area even. And the map can be accessed online, showcasing many points of interest, but also provides practical information for visitors, such as toilets and where to park. As you can see, there's a huge filtering options. I'm just going to open the map for you just now. Oh, sorry, bear with me. So it's on our Perth City Council website also. There we go. So as you can see, you can go on points of interest. So you're going to be looking for parking and you want to see what attractions and history is there. So you can load it up. I'm going to go to Pitlochry. And you can click on it. It'll give you loads of information on the side, address also to get there, and the website for there. So if you need to book tickets or want to see opening times, the links are there. In regards to the sensors that we have deployed also, I will get those up. So here we go, have one at Kinloch Rannoch, and it will show you different times of day, busy, when it's quiet through the night, etc. You can also filter through different days. So if you're going up on Saturday, you know it's busier and when it's quieter. The aim from the Perth and Kinross is to make the area a memorable holiday destination and to provide a handy guide to many of our attractions as well as our towns and villages, and to give practical advice, as I mentioned, about toilets, parking, and it also advise campers where motorhome users can empty their facilities as well. The map can be accessed through a smartphone, and it means visitors will always be able to carry this around and they'll have it on them. You know, it's not going to be one of those we jumped in the car or we forgot the map, so it will always be there. As it's wholly digital, it can also be updated if there's things like road closures that visitors need to be aware of. This is one of the things that is very important to us. So for example, if there's flash flooding and one of the walks up one of the hills or the Monroes has been washed away or damaged during that, we can remove it from the app to then not promote people to go there. You know, if there's strong winds and in some of the forestry sites, if the trees have come down, the paths are closed, we can put that on the app so people know. So if they may be planned in advance, but then things change with the weather, we'll then be able to advise them. And we're hoping many of our local residents will find it just as useful for those visitors to come here on holiday. Stats, we can get loads of different stats. We can see how they're using it, desktop, mobile and tablet, and we can also see their location if they have it turned on. So these stats were taken, I think, after about 5 days of it being launched, so they're not up-to-date stats here, but yeah, you can see where people are that are looking at it. We can see how many views we are also getting on it. You can see it was launched on the 3rd, so you can see there was an influx there. Hopefully these numbers will grow and grow once word of mouth comes out. We can also see the average engagement time, how long they're on, possibly what they're looking at also. Also users by country, which I think will be very handy over time. You know, we do get a lot of visitors from all over Europe. So it'll be good to see if they are using it to plan their trip ahead. And that is me. That any questions we can take in the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. That's great, and it looks like a really interesting tool. And again, you know, it's the interest in, I suppose, is how you can influence visitors and how you can inform them, and if we can do that better, to make better choices on where they visit, then you know that's a great use of technology. It'll be interesting to see what kind of data you start to accrue through the app. So thank you very much for that. So we'll move. Yeah.
Sorry, just one more point. Also on the map, Perth and Kinross, it's, you know, sandwiched between 2 national parks, and a lot of people just go to the Hermitage, for example. But then if they're looking on the map, they might think, oh, we've actually got Falls of Achard and Kenmore, so they might then think, oh, there's actually loads of different places in Perth and Kinross that they didn't know about. So it should inform all our visitors on other areas to go to instead of just just the hotspots.
I know, and if it would be good to get, to get residents using it as well, as a kind of as a regular tool. So, hopefully once you start getting more usage, it would be good to find out more about what people are doing with it. So that's great. Thank you so much. And maybe you can post the URL for it in the chat if you don't mind.
Yep, that's no
Yep.
problem. I'll do that in a moment.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's great. So questions for Leanne after our next speaker. I'm delighted to introduce Professor Angela Tregear from Edinburgh University Business School. And talking of trying to influence visitor behaviour, Angela's been doing some really interesting research work with Cairngorms National Park and other parts of Scotland, looking at really the impact of digital tools such as apps and whether they can influence visitor behaviour and if we can use them to sort of nudge behaviour or influence visitors. So welcome, Angela. Thank you.
Hello there, thanks very much, Leslie, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to give this talk. I've really enjoyed the presentation so far, so interesting. And as Leslie says, I suppose my presentation is taking more sort of a direct visitor perspective. So I'm aiming to share some of the results of our recent research project conducted on behalf of Cairngorms National Park. As many of you will already be aware, the Cairngorms National Park doesn't currently have a dedicated mobile app for visitors, and so we were asked to explore what the appetite might be for such an app and what people would look for in an app, and also to explore the potential of a mobile app to encourage visitors to engage in sustainable behaviours like avoiding busy areas and taking public transport. So the project itself I conducted along with my colleagues Evelina Lacka and Liu Gao at the business school. And it was conducted in two parts. In the first phase, we conducted a desk review of existing tools and mobile apps, and also conducted interviews with a selection of DMOs and their app developers in Scotland and the UK more widely. And then in the second part of the project, we undertook a survey of visitors to the Cairngorms National Park, investigating what their existing use was of digital tools and devices, investigating what they would want to see in an app for the Cairngorms National Park, what features they'd look for, and then testing their responses to different types of information that might appear on an app that would be seeking to persuade them to engage in more sustainable behaviours. And so I'm going to share some of these results with you, bearing in mind that for the survey, obviously the results are based on reported behavioural intention, so we have to treat the results with a bit of caution. I'm really interested to hear from other people in the meeting today where you have some more insights based on actually tracking behaviours from use of apps as well to compare and contrast. So in terms of our phase one findings, very briefly, so what we learned is that across different types of existing tools, visitors do seem to like what you might call one-stop shop type apps, so those that have quite comprehensive information centered upon an interactive map. I think the previous presentation from Leanne illustrates very well exactly this kind of orientation of an app, so having that interactive map at the center of it. And the review also revealed that visitors rate highly the kinds of features that help them to connect with local culture and a sense of place, such as kind of audio guides, storytelling, etc. We also established that amongst DMOs and their app providers, there's definitely an increasing desire for features in apps that can try to nudge people towards desired behaviours. And these translate into features like providing real-time information on busyness levels at hotspot sites, things like live journey planners for travelling on public transport, and also perhaps more emerging, but the use of incentives, either financial or status-based, or elements of gamification to try and engage people more into these kinds of behaviours. However, despite this increasing interest, we found little publicly available data that evidences the effectiveness of those kinds of features to actually shape and change behaviour. And so that's what led us to the second part of the project, which was the visitor survey. So let me just talk you briefly through the design of the survey, because that helps to understand the results as I'm showing them. So the total sample size was 101, so it's quite a modest sample, split fairly evenly between questionnaires collected from face-to-face interview on site in the national park, and data collected from an online version of the questionnaire. You can see from the bullet points there the profile of the survey respondents. So there's a slight over-representation of females in the sample, a slightly older age group, quite evenly split between people that haven't visited the park very many times before and those who have been a lot, more than 20 times. Quite a large proportion of the sample were either day trippers or short stay visitors, and across the sample, private car was the dominant form of transport. So that's just to give you a feel of what the profile of the survey respondents were. And the questions that we asked these respondents were, first of all, what digital devices and apps do they use when travelling? And then we showed them a list of 13 different features that can appear on mobile apps and do appear quite commonly on mobile apps. And we asked them to rate the usefulness of these. For our analytical purposes, we group these into 4 categories, if you will. So functional, that includes things like the ability to use the feature or the app offline. And to have an interactive map as the core of the app. Practical features like tips and advice from different sources, events guide, ability to book tickets, what we might call immersive features, so things like VR, AR experiences and audio guides, and then what we might call nudging features. So these are the kinds of features on an app that DMOs might use to try and influence or encourage visitors to behave in particular ways. For the last part of the questionnaire, we sought to test more directly what types of information on a mobile app for the Cairngorms could be used to encourage people to A, avoid the busy areas, the hotspots, and B, take the bus. So I'll just share with you how we did that. So what we did was we mocked up 3 types of information on 3 screenshots. And here are the ones for avoiding busy locations. So we showed the respondents a mock-up of a live busyness map, discount offer to them if they avoided a busy area, and social media posts about the busyness of an area. And on showing each of these 3 screenshots, we asked the respondents to say how useful they thought this information was, whether it made their travelling decisions easier, and whether these would change their mind about travelling to a busy area. And then for bus travel, it was the same kind of approach. So again, we mocked up 3 screenshots, each showing a different type of information. So we showed them a live map of sort of tracking where buses are. We showed them social media posts about bus travel and a discount offer for bus travel. And again, asked them the same questions about usefulness, ease, and whether it would change their mind. So the findings then, let me move to that. So in terms, first of all, of the devices and tools that the survey sample used, very clearly our results confirm the popularity of mobile devices for travelling and touring. So the vast majority used a smartphone daily. Around 2/3 use a laptop daily. This is in general usage, not specifically when travelling. But on the other side of the coin, close to half of respondents never use a tablet, and over half never use a desktop computer. So these results really do confirm what we probably already knew, that developing tools and apps that are compatible and suitable for mobile devices is really important, and that can be at any stage of trip planning and traveling. On our next set of questions about usage of mobile apps specifically, and would people be interested in one for the Cairngorms National Park, we found a sort of interesting anomaly, I suppose. On the left-hand side, we see that actually a fair proportion of the survey respondents said they never used mobile visitor apps, and only a very small proportion said that they used them most of the time or always. But then a large proportion said that they would find an app for the national park very or extremely useful. So I'm interested to hear what people in the room make of this. There may be a bit of social desirability bias going on in the responses to the question on the right hand side, but there does seem to be a bit of a gap there, yeah, I'm interested to see what others make of that. I think it certainly reminds us to be quite cautious and focused in app development, because clearly these aren't things that everybody's using all the time currently. So to move people towards them, they need to be doing something beneficial for the user. On the question of what features would people like to see on a mobile app for the Cairngorms National Park, so what we found is that functional features were rated the most useful. So that's the ability to use offline and the use of an interactive map, or the feature of an interactive map. These were seen as very useful by a large proportion of respondents. That was followed by practical features. So all those in that category, except for ticket booking and tips from other travellers, ranked in the top 7 of the 13. There was mixed views about the nudging features. So almost 2/3 of the respondents thought that special offers were very or extremely important, but carbon impact information ranked very low on their priority list. And then, somewhat to our surprise and in contradiction to the results of the phase 1 part of the project, we found immersive features were rated lowest of all. So a small proportion of respondents thought audio guides were very or extremely useful, and similarly VR and AR experiences were rated quite low by a large proportion. And again, I'd be interested to hear what other people's views of that or other measurement of those features has been for others in the room, because there does seem to be something a bit anomalous or kind of contradictory there. And then what about our lovely screenshots then? So we're showing the respondents these mock-ups of different types of information designed to encourage them to first of all, avoid busy areas. So what we found was that the live busyness map was viewed the most positively of the three examples shown, with more than 3/4 of respondents agreeing that this information was useful and would make it easier for them to decide where to travel. A smaller proportion agreed that this information would get them to change their mind about where to travel. So there's a gap between a perception that this is useful and helps to make life easier, deciding easier, but less so that this would actually change behaviour. We asked a follow-up question of those who said that it wouldn't change their behaviour to try and get a further insight into why it wouldn't. And the most common reason was, once I decide to visit a place, I don't usually change my mind. I think I'm going to come back to that in the conclusions. Again, I'd be interested to hear what other people's experiences have been in measuring something similar. Anecdotally, respondents also commented on connectivity problems being a major barrier to their use of real-time information. I think that connects with the question that Jamie had earlier about, what do you do when you're in an area where the mobile signal is just really weak or unreliable, and that's something that did crop up again in our findings as well. We had a very similar picture when it came to the screenshots related to bus travel. So again, it was the live information which was seen as the most persuasive, if you will, in this case in the form of a live bus tracker map. Slightly smaller proportion agreed that this would make life easier for them and making decisions and was useful information. Again, similarly, proportionately smaller number of respondents thought that it would actually change their mind. Both the social media postings and the discount offer were a much smaller proportion rated those as offering useful information and something that would change their mind. We again asked a follow-up question for those who thought that the discount offer wouldn't change their mind about bus travel, again just to kind of get a bit more insight there. And you can see the responses there was more evenly spread. Bus travel isn't practical, the bus service won't take me where I want. We also had some anecdotal comments as well. The offer isn't relevant to me because I have a bus pass. I can't use a live discount because connectivity is unreliable, so it's that issue again. And I don't like the feeling of being controlled or influenced while I'm on holiday, which that's quite an interesting, perhaps difficult to address comment. So a couple of conclusions just for me to wrap up for you. So on our first question of what do visitors want from apps, I think our slightly kind of anomalous and contradictory findings about what people currently do, but then what they say they might want, the very different ratings given to different features in an app and the perceived usefulness of them. I think all of that just reinforces how, when developing apps, there does appear to be an appetite for them for sure, but to be cautious and focused and really have a firm grasp of what it is that the visitors that the DMO is wanting to attract and reach, what it is that they are actually wanting, because there is a potential there to invest resource in things which aren't actually going to make a lot of difference to the people that are most likely to download the app. So it's being tailored, I suppose, it would be the main kind of conclusion there. And then in terms of the what do apps do for visitors? Can they encourage sustainable behaviour? There just seems to be a big gap from our survey respondents between them saying, yeah, this looks useful, this I would pay some attention to this, but it wouldn't necessarily change my plans and change what I actually do. And our reflections are that to try and address that gap, or try and reduce that gap, I should say, there are 3 kinds of actions that DMOs could take. First of all, related to the visitor. So that comment, I tend not to change my mind once I've made my travel plans, suggests to us that any interventions or advice that are given by the DMO to avoid busy areas or take the bus that appear on an app really need to happen well before people embark upon specific journeys, because once they've decided to go somewhere, an awful lot of people just commit to it. I think the issue, and we've mentioned it at the top of the workshop, about coordinating information across DMOs so that there is the potential to intervene meaningfully in people's decisions before they get close to a destination, and being able to work through that. I think that's really important, and making that information really easy to locate and genuinely user-centric. And then issues to do with addressing the infrastructure. There was quite a lot coming through from the survey about people not trusting alternative services, specifically the bus service. That's, you know, that seemed to come up an awful lot in interviews with DMOs as well, about the unreliability of bus services, and they're just not really fit for what visitors want. They're there to take kids to school, for example, and so on and so forth. So there's just some improvements there. And I won't need to say much about the connectivity things, because I think Kevin's pretty much covered it. I think it's very exciting about the 4G infill that you were talking about, Kevin. But I think this issue about people perceiving that they can't rely upon live information because they're not sure if they'll be able to access it when they need to. So that is my presentation then. So thanks very much, and I'll hand back to Leslie.
Thank you so much, Angela. There's a lot there, really fascinating insights. And people, please put your cameras back on. We have 10 minutes left. So just thinking about Angela's presentation, you know, just kind of summing up a couple of points. So people seem to, you know, that kind of contradiction between they were into the interactive map and the travel tips from other travelers, and really the focus of the point of using the app was for busy areas, but at the same time, you know, other people said they didn't really want to use apps. Connectivity, you know, both a kind of technical connectivity and almost a transport connectivity reliability issue. Messaging, really important from the destination perspective. But really interesting insights. And I'm sure, you know, there'll be questions from others who, one of the fundamental questions is, you know, I think that you raised, Angela, was, do people find apps useful for visiting these kind of locations? And you'd be interesting to find out more. So we've only got 10 minutes, and I just want to say now, we would have kept a few minutes back to kind of sum up, but if anyone wants to get in touch with CENSIS, with Kate, or with myself through interface, we'll put contact details in the chat, and hopefully we can share some of the slides, and we will follow up with you afterwards. So if we've only got 10 minutes, it would be good to use as much as we can for questions. So yeah, okay, thanks, Mark. So anyone got any questions? Oh, Brenna. Jessie, is it Brenna or Jessie?
It's Brenna, yeah.
Hi, Brenna.
Jessie is my latter name, but don't worry, I get it all the time. Some people even merge it into Jenna. Hi, I'm Brenna Jessie with the Cairngorms National Park Authority. That was so interesting, and I really enjoyed both of those, well, all of those presentations, but Angela and Leanne especially, from coming at this from a comms point of view. And actually, Angela, I wondered whether you thought if some of that anomaly actually could be explained through communications. I think that from a user perspective, the app market is so cluttered, and the threshold for downloads obviously is really high. It's obviously got to be very useful, but I think it's also got to be marketed and promoted really strategically. I was really struck recently when I went to Iceland and hired a car, and as part of the kind of induction with the car, it was, and these are the 2 apps that you have to download in order for your trip to kind of be effective and safe. And so I suppose for an app to be successful, there's got to be that really timely and accurate kind of intervention around that. And I think, yeah, I guess I just wondered your perspective on that, but then also kind of similarly for Leanne as to the kind of plans in terms of the promotion of that app. Yeah, what kind of interventions, I suppose, had been considered as part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely right, and that good communications, well-tailored and targeted communications, has a huge role to play and can be very, very beneficial there. I think for destinations like Cairngorms National Park or Loch Lomond Trotton National Park, which already have a lot of resonance with audiences, and so for them it might be easier to work with, because people already sort of have a way of getting to you, or might know how to get there, and you have some control over that, and you're already, you know, kind of on top of that. So it probably makes it easier. I wonder whether for smaller destinations or emerging destinations, there, you know, that is more of a challenge, perhaps. I mean, I think one of the sort of interesting insights that we got from speaking to developers on the sort of issue of user centricity, because I think that's part of your question, was how the sort of filters can work on apps. And I'm interested to hear what Leanne thinks about this as well, so I'll try and be as quick as possible. And that is that sometimes if somebody is told that the place that they want to go to is really busy, it's completely stowed out, don't go there, you'll have a rubbish day. But so here's alternatives, but sometimes those alternatives don't necessarily fit with exactly what the user wants, because if you're a family and you were going to go to a castle, actually the reason why you wanted to go to the castle was because they had toilets, a cafe and a play park. And sometimes a filter would say, well, here's other castles, but none of those castles have the things which are actually the essential components of the good day out for that user. So it's trying to find a way of using the filtering devices and other, you know, devices on the app to really work in the interests and the priorities of users. I thought that was, you know, quite a useful way of thinking about it as well.
Does that answer your question, Bryn? I'm just conscious of time, although you can continue this conversation after the workshop.
Yeah, no, that it definitely does. I'd be really interested to hear from Leanne's perspective, but again, we can pick that up separately because I don't want to take up all of the space.
Well, there are a couple of questions for Leanne. I think one was, Leanne, who updated how is the data updated? You know, if you're wanting to add updates, is that somebody's, you know, job at your side? And then somebody else asked, are there plans to share the data you get from the map with the National Park authorities, particularly for areas of spatial overlap? I don't know if you've got that information.
Yeah, so we can update it, I wouldn't say in real time, but we can send an email and Waverley will update it and remove something or add it very, very quickly. So if there was a flash flood and the path ruined, it can be removed. You know, I don't know, I have an exact time scale, but it will be very quick. In regards to sharing data, Waverley actually created a similar map for Loch Lomond and the Trossachs, I believe, anyway. So they would all feed into the same pot with Waverley. In regards to social media and sort of getting the word out, we do have a social media plan, and we will keep promoting it through our social media channels. Word of mouth, and the visitor rangers will talk about it with the visitors that they engage with on a daily basis. So we'll hopefully just build it that way. We'll have to see what happens, but we do have a social media plan in action for the summer.
Okay, thank you. A question from Murray: is there any research on how many apps a typical visitor is likely to download as they travel across Scotland? I'm not sure that there is. I don't know if Visit Scotland have done any work on this. If anyone's with us from Visit Scotland, Angela, are you aware of anything like that?
We found very little sort of hard empirical data on app usage in a Scottish tourism context. I mean, I think, you know, it just further reinforces the value of pushing data sharing, I think, because these are really sort of useful fundamental things that I think everybody would benefit from knowing about. What I would say though is there is a difference between having an app downloaded on your visitors' devices and them actually using it in a meaningful way. And I think you know, there will be, you know, lots of people tootling about Scotland with umpteen apps on their phone, and they just not, you know, they're not using them. So they, you know, they found them and they downloaded them and they went blah blah blah, and then that's that. And so I think the trick is, well, what is it that you can put into apps that will engage people a bit more? And I think that's why the features like the interactive map are good, because clearly these are things that people want, and it allows them to get to the information that they want in an intuitive way. But then I think things like the use of incentives and gamification, so, you know, collecting stamps. I'm thinking like Scottish Islands passport as an example there. Other ones where, you know, people can, you know, there's a little bit of competition between other visitors going on in order to try and find things, or, you know, spot stuff. You know, these are techniques which are used in non-tourism contexts to try and increase engagement and sustain app usage over a period of time, beyond that first kind of, oh, I saw the publicity, I downloaded it, and yeah, and that's that.
Yeah, yeah. There is another kind of theory of behavioral economics that I've looked at, and there's an organisation, I think, Heather, if you can put the link in the chat, called Behaviour Smart. And I think they've actually got a project with Visit Scotland and the Travel Foundation on decarbonising the whole kind of value chain of tourism. They're working with some tour operators, and this came out of the Glasgow Declaration, COP26. But actually, there's a lot of examples there on their website about trying to change and influence visitor behaviour, and how different destinations have tackled that. So it's worth having a look at that. But in terms of research for Scotland, I'm really not sure. I'm really conscious of time. There was a couple more questions. There was one from Kim Ross. Kim, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm
basically
here.
Oh, hi, Kim. So it was around, it might be going back a bit, but it was, is there any type of data that can differentiate between domestic and international visitors, mobile tracing or another way? And I don't know if that's for Kevin or Cade, or I'm not sure if that would be possible, or depending on the technology.
I'll jump in since Kevin hasn't already. So essentially, no. If you're trying to pick up any signals in terms of Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, it won't be differentiating between somebody who's bought a device in the UK and using it in the UK, or somebody from abroad. At least in simple terms. So interesting that question was asked, because I'm actually just conversing with one of my colleagues at CENSIS about some of the things that have been discussed today, and one of the questions that she actually asked was about being able to tell the difference between international travellers and Scottish travellers when doing market research. So interesting that comes up literally in the same 5-minute window.
Well, what I would say, we're out of time now, but so I want to thank all our speakers, Cade and Kevin from CENSIS, Leanne from Perth and Kinross Council, and Angela from University of Edinburgh Business School. And thank you to everyone who's given up their time to come along today and share questions and insights. And all I would say is, if there's an appetite for more of this in terms of exploring these issues in further workshops, if you've got questions, we'll share the video. We can share links to resources. Please get in touch with CENSIS, our colleagues from CENSIS, and please get in touch with myself and my colleagues at Interface. There may be ways that we can help support potential projects or explore ideas. And again, I'm sure, if there's other things that we can do in future workshops, we would be really happy to do so. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming today, and thanks to our speakers. And I'll let you go because we're over time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much to everyone.